All right, let's get started. Well, most of you know this already, but I'm Eric Einhorn. I'm the General Artistic Director of On-Site Opera. Thank you all for being here today. Many of you have been on a couple of these calls already, and we're so happy to have you here and so grateful for the members of our staff and Artistic Advisory Council who are sharing some insight into what they do and how we can all learn in this time of listening and learning and pace changing. But this is a particularly interesting topic. I think you'll all agree. I think it's why you're all here. The idea of marketing oneself and marketing in the industry in general with the ever-changing landscape and ways to do that, platforms on which to do that. But now especially, given where we are, given the state of the world and where we're going, how all of that will be impacted. So I'm thrilled to have our two amazing speakers with us today. Maya Rose Tweten is the founder and creative director of Maya Rose Creative, which is a digital print and creative studio that has helped dozens and dozens of artists and companies with their online presence, including companies like Santa Fe Opera and Metropolitan Opera. Maya is also the marketing manager for the Metropolitan Opera, dealing a lot with international partnerships and the Live in HD series. We also have Jorell Williams, critically acclaimed baritone and former cast member of On-Site Opera Productions. He's performed with Seattle Opera, Santa Fe, Orchestra St. Luke's, Caramore, American Opera Project, City Center Encores, what else? ART, Urban Arias, just to name a few. And we're thrilled to have them both with us. So I would love to, before we go any further, I need to make the disclaimer that this session is being recorded. As the discussion goes on, please feel free to write questions in the chat feed and we'll get to all of them, as many of them as we can. These hours go by very, very quickly. So to begin, I'm gonna unmute our speakers so we can hear them. And I'd love for you both to be able to just give us a quick snapshot of the journey you took to get to where you are. Maya, why don't you start us off?
Sure. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? Awesome. Yeah, so I have always been in the performing arts. My parents are actually both performers. So I grew up as a dancer, singer, and actress, and always wanted to be a singer. So I went to school for vocal performance. And I found when I got there that there was just the general, it was interesting, a fear factor. Having come from parents that are performing artists, I was so used to the lifestyle of that, but there was also a lot of feeling of, oh my gosh, but when I get out there, how am I going to market myself? I certainly kind of wanted to have a side business for myself, and I felt a lot of guilt for that because a lot of people were looking at that as admitting, potential failure. But I decided to, without apology, end up studying film and journalism and design anyways, which actually ended up really, really helping me, not only in understanding how to market, but also in a very interesting career path that brought me down house managing at Santa Fe Opera, through which I then got a marketing job with them, ended up building and launching their website, which then brought me to New York to work on the Met's website. And I now manage the Live in HD marketing for the Met. But through all of that, it's been a very fascinating journey of working with both companies and individuals and creatives, and having multiple perspectives in terms of marketing yourself. And I certainly understand firsthand the struggle of creating a personal brand, whether you're an artist or an organization, and determining what story it is you're trying to tell, which I think is incredibly important and should always be at the core of marketing. But yeah, I kind of, at this point in my career, I never really expected to to have a business. But yeah, I'm very grateful for where I am, and yeah, that's me.
Thanks.
Thank
Jorell,
you.
how about you?
Hi, everyone. I'm Jorell. I'm a baritone sometimes. Right now, I'm not bare of tone because I'm not singing right now. And I started off as a pianist, age 4, and a hairline fracture later got me into singing opera. kind of a happy accident, and that's kind of what happened. I wanted to be a school teacher and a biologist, and that didn't happen just because life happens. And I started out kind of trying to figure out what I wanted to do, because I wanted to do it all. I wanted to still sing jazz. I wanted to sing musical theater. I wanted to sing opera. And as you're classically trained, I think a lot of the times we are told that we shouldn't or couldn't do something because we have to focus on one specific thing to be great at it. And my response was, well, why can't I just be great at all of it? And I always got the eyes, and it's like, okay. And lo and behold, I'm still here. So it's just a testament of like hard work, perseverance, and just making sure that you trust what you believe in while, you know, on the journey, accepting that changes happen and as you evolve as a human being and as an artist, you adapt to what is needed. And that's kind of where I am today. That's the short story.
Wonderful, thank you. So I think it's safe to say that most people in the arts right now, whether you're an individual artist, a company, or sort of a service provider in the industry, you have some kind of online presence. You have marketed yourself in some way, and I want to start by looking at social media as a way to jump into this, because I think it's a way that a lot of people step into that. Maya, in your experience, what would you say are sort of the top 10 rookie mistakes people make when marketing themselves on social media?
Oh gosh, let's see. I think certainly there's a fine line between a professional social media account and a personal. And I think as an artist, that's super tough. Because a lot of social media accounts, you know, as an artist, you're marketing yourself. It's your personal brand. So I think one of the things that is really need to make clear is being, you know, don't stay away from politics if that's something that's really, really, you know, incredibly important to you, but certainly can ignite very heated conversation. Remembering that when you are commenting on other people's profiles, you know, social media is meant to be social. It's meant to be a community. But if you're using your personal Instagram, for example, as your singer Instagram, you have to be really careful that whatever it is you're putting out there in comments is reflecting on you and your business, essentially. And I think in addition to that, it's being overindulgent can certainly be one of those things where it's you obviously are marketing yourself, but I think remembering that it's a community and you want to give back. So not going overboard with constant posting. I mean, it can be, you know, posting at optimal times. Obviously, if you're up at 4 a.m, that's great. There might be other people in the world that are going to watch your video at 4 a.m. But trying to make sure that you're aware of when you're posting your content is a huge one. I think a huge, as Jorell just pointed out, you know, the adaption and adapt react, I think is a huge thing. Knowing your audience, knowing what your audience is going through, especially right now with the current world's pandemic. This is an example of a time where you just have to be very aware of that and find your own way to react to it. I don't know, Jorell, do you have any thoughts on that too?
I mean, you pretty much said everything. I would add one thing in that when you do find the peak hours versus the peak hours of when you're posting, if you have something that you really want to get across before you post it, post something that is just, for me, what I'm finding is that if you post something general, like what would be your theme song when you walk into a room? Most likely that's a common question that people would want to, you know, latch onto, and then they'll start going through soundtracks and such, and they'll respond to that. And then you follow that up with whatever you want to post, because people are already engaged. And what you will find is that that's kind of a way to kind of teeter your personal life with your professional life.
Agreed.
Perfect. You both spoke about optimal times, and I know there are certain services that try and algorithm that for you. Mm-hmm. Is there general best practices about optimal time and frequency of posting that doesn't sort of jam up your feed or an algorithm?
I mean, for me, I've seen, I have a friend who posts every 7 minutes. It's a lot. a little bit of a lot. But what I'm finding for performers specifically, between like 10:30 and 1 p.m., when most people are either just starting their day, the kids are off at school, they have a 5-minute break at work, they might be going to lunch early. Most people are using that time to kind of check in with family and social media and such. And then I guess between 4 and 5, when you're about to get off of work and when you're off of work, when is, I think, the two large time periods where people check in.
I totally agree with that. And something interesting to throw in there is that if you're an international singer, performer, creative, bearing in mind what your audience is. And so if you're in Europe, for example, but your core social following is in the United States, just kind of thinking through, okay, what time is it for them? Because I think that's often something that can occur, is that you're in your own mindset in your own time zone and you kind of completely forget, oh, these other people, that's actually 7 a.m. their time. Maybe there are some early birds. But I totally agree with Jorell. I think it's finding those times in the day that most people, and honestly using yourself, would I be on social right now? Would I be wanting to see this content right now? I think is a huge part of that. There are tons of studies out there about specific times, but it's also very different for each channel. Instagram, I think, is probably one of the most popular right now, but Facebook has, I would say, an older audience, and they have their own time zone of when they are most active. So, yeah.
Now, also you had mentioned the personal versus professional accounts on various platforms, and I know for On-Site Opera, we are classified as a business on Facebook, so therefore what Facebook does with our data and how it treats our posts is different than my personal feed. Is there a difference on any platform between if you register as your personal whatever, or some kind of business or a professional? Is there a plus or minus on a platform for that?
I would say, Facebook, certainly you have to choose, it's your personal profile versus a page. With Instagram in particular, they have now made it so you can be a business profile on Instagram, but you can actually hide that fact, and you can hide your contact information, hide the industry and specific role you've chosen. But you still, what's great about being a business is you get the analytics behind your posts. And I would say for anyone that is looking at using their account for professional purposes, even if you're kind of on the fence, having those analytics and seeing, how many people engage with this, how many people commented, did they continue clicking through my story, etc. That's all really valuable information. But now that you have that ability to kind of turn off that outer appearance that you're making yourself professional, that's been really helpful, because I know for a lot of people that was kind of a turn off as far as Instagram business. But I think it's definitely useful. The only thing with business is you then have to make your account public, so it can't be a private account anymore. Which, to be honest, if you're trying to market yourself, that is a number one as far as the rookie mistakes. Definitely make your account public, and then just make sure that all the things you're posting are something you want to be public. But that's important.
Yes. Great, thank you. So just looking through some questions that we got here. Right, so what are the ways that both of you have found to sort of hack the system, that everybody is posting all sorts of stuff, that once sort of there's a trend of a type of posting, whether it's some kind of hashtag or cadenza challenge, aria challenge, and there's a flood of information and similar posts, even formatted and visually the same. What have both of you found ways to set yourself apart? General rules of construction for video content, photographic content, text content. And Jorell, I wanted also, if you can mention sort of your non-conventional marketing of yourself as well. So why don't we start, Maya, we start with you with that.
I think we should start with Jorell. I think his approach is awesome.
Nice segue. Okay. So I was anticipating this question, so I was took notes, and in here it says, Jorell, if this question comes up, divert with a funny anecdote, a riddle, or run out of the room.
I was waiting for this.
Just kidding. So I think based on the fact that everyone is currently on lockdown or quarantine, there's this feeling that in the arts, we don't want to become irrelevant, and we want to still have our faces within public consumption. And there's two sides to this, and this is just my personal views on it. I think it's a great thing to keep opera alive and to keep performance alive, and to let people see that this is where we live. This is our hearts. We wear our hearts on our sleeve. This is our normalcy. And the flip side of that coin, unfortunately, is what we mentioned about peak hours and off-peak hours, and what you're posting versus, how relevant it is to the time that we're in. If you're constantly posting videos every 5 minutes versus posting something and then your kid runs in the room, like, I don't know, like, it depends on what you're presenting during this time. You don't want to overhaul, but you also don't want to underhaul. So it's a fine line between the two. For me personally, what I've found is I'm taking more time to rebrand something that I've had randomly. About 2 or 3 years ago, I was presented with a question from my mother, and she said, how come you haven't performed in your hometown of Brentwood, Long Island? Brentwood, woo woo. And I thought to myself, that's a good idea. So we found an old cinema, and we presented this idea. I would do 3 series of concerts based on themes of my life. And the first theme was classical music and the beginning. The second theme was around the world and back while I was traveling. And the third theme was where to go from now. And it was basically classical music, musical theater, jazz standards, and songs that everyone knows today, plus some piano stuff, because that's what I grew up with. And the response was so amazing. And of course, some of you, I see some familiar faces on here. If you know me personally, you know that when I walk in a room, I just like to be a ray of sunlight and joy, just because why not? It doesn't cost anything. But that also transfers over into my performance. And I think when you're presenting something and marketing something that is truly who you are when you walk in the room and when you exit the room when you're home, people are drawn to that because it's real. And there's a realism about performance that you do not get. There's a visceral energy that only can come from us because we are in it, And so this trend just started, and my friend said, well, why don't you just make it the Jorell show? And I said, that's dumb. Why would I do that? And then she just put a hashtag randomly one day on a photo. She said, oh God, the Jorell show. And then people started logging on and following it. And so every time I've, done a concert or performance, opera companies, when I would go there, would say, actually, since you're going to be here, would you mind doing a concert, like around a theme of something that you want to do? And so this thing. It was like, I'm going here to do this performance with this opera company or this musical theater show. On top of that, and special performance by Jorell during the Jorell show, whatever the name of the concert is. And it's been amazing because it allows me to expand my brand of who I am as a human being, but also I like jokes. So if I'm playing Scarpia on stage when I'm 50, not now, there's this, oh wow, he's a terrible person, he's a terrible character, but we just love him as a human being. So there's support that. And I find that for me, that has worked. It might not work for everyone, but for me, I feel that staying true to oneself is so important, especially now today in the world we live in, because that's where your foundation is. You can't unbreakable. You gotta be that rock. Maya.
Oh, hello. Yeah, I think that's incredibly true, and I applaud that, because the most important thing is being true to yourself and being real. And I think the difficulty with social media and why it's had for such a long time a bad connotation is that it can be so fake. And I think people are able to create this version of themselves that might not actually be reality. But I think as a performer, you know, and the fact that you are wearing your heart on your sleeve, and that's such a wonderful thing about performance, is finding that way of continuing that through your social media, and figuring out, you know, what is unique about you. And this could be, especially with all this, you know, extra time we have right now, figuring that out, and not apologizing for, you know, talking about yourself with your friends and saying, okay, how do I come off to you? Like, what are the key things that you feel are unique about me versus other people? And using that to appear on social media, so when you're posting something, it's unique to you and it's different. Because I think there's such a key in being different, and especially when there's so much being posted right now. And as Jorell said, you know, not over posting. But there was actually a very interesting study that was done years ago. I'm trying to remember the name of the brand, but they were trying to stand out on social media, and instead of posting ads and posting actual content, they posted these bright orange, you know, squares across the feed, and people, you know, who were just scrolling and scrolling and scrolling actually stopped because it was so different, and they were able to get messaging across, and actually started to be paid by brands and other companies to actually sponsor specific, you know, orange square posts and things like of that sort, because it was a splash and it was different. And I think what Jorell is doing is just that. It's different. It's something unique. It's a new idea. So I would say in this time, you know, not feeling guilt about feeling like, oh my gosh, I have all this time, I have to post, I have to be, you know, out there. It's just as valuable to utilize that time to, as Jorell said, what he's doing, kind of rebranding and figuring out what his messaging is, and working more on that project. It's so valuable to use that time however it is you feel you best can. And that doesn't always mean that you're posting once a day, once a week. It could be, you know, taking a break from social media and coming back to it. But I think that is also so important, because very rarely do we get that allowance to kind of pull ourselves back. As artists, especially.
May I add to one more thing you just said, because it was so important, just about posting in general. There are some people, I mean, like myself, I don't post often, but when I do, it's usually meaningful, or there's substance to it. There are people who maybe post once a month, sometimes once every 3 months, because they aren't as engaged in the social media world, and that's totally fine. If you're one of those people, know that sometimes when you do re-engage, you're more likely to get buzz because you're not a constant in the feed. When you show up, it's like, oh wait, whoa, I haven't heard from this person in such a long time. So they're going to chime in. And then what happens is then you can kind of cater what you post when you post, knowing that your following and your response time is going to be different from someone that is constantly posting.
Mm-hmm.
So just keep that in your back pocket.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing, and this speaks to Crystal's question, is really about authenticity and authenticity of voice and tone, and being true to yourself, so that the posts that you create follow your own timeline, your own schedule, because that's what's going to ring truest. It's not a matter of, even though social media can force us to do this, which is sort of keeping up with the Joneses, of this singer is posting every 7 minutes, so surely I have to also. But so what I'm hearing is that is not necessarily the case. That that authenticity of posting patterns and content are what are most important to sort of set yourself apart. So if I could ask an inflammatory question. As an artist, whether it's being a singer, I know we have other artists. We have a costume designer that hi Summer, and another director that I see on my screen, and conductors, and all sorts of people. Do you even need social media to successfully market yourself as an artist? And if not, what are those things, what are those avenues for marketing yourself that you could call on?
2 words, YouTube and Vimeo. Because while they are not currently defined under social media, it is under media because it's social, they are privately separate from those other media platforms. And so if you're, I think a lot of comedians use that, a lot of painters have done that, a lot of people that use their forum with schools and such, what they do is to create it there. And with them not doing any work, those videos and those messages get across to social media separately. So they're not doing any work other than what they would normally do. And that gets them their own social media presence without them having to do any work at all. So that is one option. The other is, I mean, you could go old school. You can do flyers. I mean, I still do. It's fun. You know, people use Canva to do advertisements, email blasts instead of social media. I don't know, Maya. These are just samples.
It's funny. I was actually approached with this question from a client a couple months ago who's a director and doesn't feel comfortable on social media because it's just not their thing. And I have so much respect for that because it's funny. I spend, sometimes it feels like all day, every day on social media. And I have pretty much an inability at this point. I work 7 days a week in social media, online. I can't, I very rarely have a dark day. And so I understand that feeling of, oh my gosh, I don't want to be tasked with having an account to even feel like I have to put myself out there on the daily, weekly, monthly. So what I said to them was, well, that's completely valuable. And I don't push social media onto anyone that doesn't want that for themselves. But I think there's so many other ways, as Jorell just mentioned, to have yourself out there without being the main drive of what's there. That said, even if it's just having a web page, that doesn't have to be a website. And I think that's where something like Squarespace, but there's many services that do this now, giving yourself, even if it's just a cover page. So you have that little tiny bit of control over the first impression because you can't make a first impression twice. And I think often what people do, whether they're a company, other artists, Googling you, if you can just control that first search that they receive, essentially, and you can just say, okay, they're going to get to my web page, and you can send them directly to YouTube, directly to Vimeo. But at least you have a place that's almost like an online business card to just immediately get them to what matters to you. And there's a little bit more control over if you're wanting people to find you online, and that's up to you as well. Just through SEO and having a domain with your name is going to be much higher in the response than if you have something on YouTube or Vimeo, unless it has enough views. So I would say, you know, that's another option too. And you don't have to have a full website. I think that's, for some people, it's a lot to actually put up a full website. So that's another option as well, if you wanted to go with that.
Excellent. And to follow up, Cassie just asked a question about, if you could speak a little bit more, Maya, about SEO, and Cassie asked about whether it's valuable to have a cursory knowledge of Google Analytics, if that's helpful.
Yeah, I mean, SEO is definitely huge nowadays. I think both, so in many ways, actually, online, having keywords and specific SEO in your website will actually make your website perform higher and appear higher in the search, especially now that Google does ads. You can have websites that are entirely unrelated to you that end up appearing above. That happens a little bit less for individuals, but it happens, you know, at the Met all the time, at Santa Fe Opera, at all these companies that I've worked with, where you'll have essentially scalpers that'll pay to have their websites appear higher than you. This can happen though as an individual, and I think what's important is just as long as you're bringing home, you know, opera singer or any of that type of thing, you're able to just appear that little bit higher in the search. And that's just as true when it comes to Facebook and Instagram, because, you know, hashtags are very important and it's how you get discovered. So I think having that basic understanding of Google Analytics, and I don't know if I want to go into a full debrief of that right now. If anyone has questions, please feel free to contact me. But I think even in Squarespace or basic web platforms, just making sure you're inputting those keywords into each of those pages for your search terms is really important. I don't know if I want to, I don't know how far I want to go into this right now. I'm happy to continue, but it's a very broad topic.
That's a whole separate workshop on SEOs and keywords and building website traffic. I'd love I'd love to shift to Allison's question, and it'll be faster, I think, Allison, if you can just ask it. So I'll unmute you. Wait.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hi, Allison.
Hi, thanks everyone. This is great. I guess my biggest question is like, for individual artists, who are we marketing ourselves to? I think for singers, there's an intuitive, like, I think of someone maybe like Corinne Winters or Jamie Barton or so many other people who have like a following that maybe even they have to at a certain point have other people manage for them because they're singing in big halls and people start kind of wanting to be able to track them over a long arc. And I think that happens for some conductors too, but by and large, it feels like we're kind of marketing ourselves or creating buzz amongst our own peers and amongst the industry. Like Eric, a couple of minutes ago, you mentioned the cadenza challenge. And I can't imagine that many opera fans at large really pass that further than like one or two levels away from the center of like our own group of performer friends, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So sometimes I feel like it feels like we're doing a lot or we're posting a lot or like, but are we really just trying to up our credibility within our industry itself for like a few general directors or for a few artistic administrators? I guess that's my question. And if so, if that's the primary audience, I guess the parallel question I had was, Jorell, your concerts sound amazing, but I wonder, like, that's added value in and of itself, the concert. Like that would, if I were an administrator, I would be super excited that someone was doing, that I could have the benefit of like programming something like that if you were already in town. But I wonder how to tease apart the added value of the concert from like the marketing of the concert, if that makes sense. Like
Absolutely.
Having another product to sell is awesome in and of itself. Yeah.
I mean, that's a great question. I've actually tossed back and forth about even doing the La Speranza challenge because I'm a baritone. Like, why would I do that? Like, no, larynx up. I think my thoughts are exactly kind of where you are with who we're marketing to. I mean, it's kind of within our circle, it's really one degree of artistic director versus coach versus conductor or music staff, singers, lighting designer. There's such a small circle within that we're really marketing to with that type of social media presence. And I think partially the other reason why I present the Jorell show as kind of a way out there type of product is because most of what you will find of me is opera singer, but then they type in Jorell show and I'm scatting something or I'm like painting something on the wall. It's totally clear it's my apartment, so I could do it. Expanding with Broadway, jazz, blues, whatever genre it could be. And it's reaching those fan bases as well. And so when you go to a community such as Oklahoma or Amarillo, Texas, where you wouldn't think they would have a large arts community, they actually do. It's just finding something that speaks to them. Funny enough, when I graduated from college, my senior project was La Notte di Figaro, and I was singing Figaro, and a pianist that Donna Vaughn, a wonderful director I worked with, he played for her husband years ago and came and heard me in the show and said, hey, I want you to come sing in a concert. And I went to sing in a concert, but it was a country band. And he said, hey, do you want to join this country band? We sing at nursing homes and we travel around New York and we hit the 5 boroughs and this is what we do. And I thought, okay. And it was random because I had no clue who this person was. And then I met the person who started the band and his name was Isaac Black and he created See Alice. And I said, that's random, but okay. And so I would go to Rector Street when I was in grad school and sit for 2 hours and like basically get paid to sit and listen to him shout through Broadway tunes and jazz songs and standards. And I would sing a bass line, doobity-bee-da-boo, soobity-boop, underneath. And then we would go do performances on Sunday, and we would market as a country band, but we sang the whole gamut of music. And these at these nursing homes, every time they would have family members from outside come to these shows, and they said, "Oh, you're an opera singer. When are you performing?" And then they would come to a show. So it was just marketing in a way that was accidental, but at the same time expansive in a way. And I think now, especially with new music in general, a lot of composers are writing blues operas and jazz operas and, you know, country operas and whatnot, or rap operas or what it can be. And it's bringing in new people, new faces, younger audiences, more people that are willing to experience something in a medium that does not seem accessible to everyone, because it's categorized as high art form, but it's really not. It's just people telling a story. But because we're in it, that's how we see it. But because we're not on the other side, that's not what it's perceived as. And I think if we change that narrative by doing everything, that will keep it alive as long as we can have it be alive. Hope that answers your question. Sorry, it's long-winded.
Maya, I want to slightly reframe the question for you. For all of your clients,
Mm-hmm.
I imagine one of the initial questions can be similar to what Allison asked, which is, what is your audience? Who is your audience? And how do you guide each of your clients in different ways to best suit them, discover who their audience really is or who they're trying to reach?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think certainly within the opera world with my clients, it's very similar to what Jorell said, as far as we are going to be in a constant uphill climb as far as continuing to educate. I think one of the ways that people can gain audience is to think about yourself as a mentor, essentially, for younger generations of singers, whether that be, you know, involving yourself in a community of young professionals and inviting them to a show, having chats with them, getting their friends involved. I think one of the things that's amazing about opera is that there's so many individuals and wonderful colleagues that I know that are somehow, they all have this small network of people, but then on the outside, there's friends of theirs that have never even been to an opera, that have never really engaged in that art form, and yet their best friend, significant others, that's their entire world. So I think it's the continual feeling of, okay, how can we invite friends to embrace that industry? But in addition to that, one of the ways that I actually gained a lot of my following was when I was in Santa Fe, and I love food. And as Jorell knows, we were talking about his cheesecake earlier.
I made a cheesecake.
What?
I made a cheesecake. Sorry, everybody.
It's beautiful, you guys. It's really beautiful. So one of the ways I ended up gaining a following actually was by going to restaurants and promoting them. But it ended up, it was actually through my own personal story of almost being a restaurant reviewer, but kind of getting recipes out of that. And I ended up kind of creating a following of that, but then people started to be engaged more and more in the arts through that. So then there was people that were coming to Santa Fe Opera because they wanted to have, you know, a group of people that then were suddenly interested. Santa Fe Opera, of course, has this amazing tailgating in the parking lot thing. So then that kind of tied into that. So I think it's finding ways, you know, as Jorell said, you know, painting his wall, like what are your other activities? What are other things that interest you? Just because your account is for, you know, singing as a girl, for example, a baritone, doesn't mean that you can't have other interests and have all these other things that are going on. I think for clients in general, one of the ways to do it too, I mean, I have a client right now that's a beach brand, and they sell perfume, and they were thinking, you know, how can I get a larger audience? And I said, well, you're a beach brand, go, and there's a huge following right now for beach cleanup. You know, find ways to have a purpose and have a cause. If there's anything in your life that you're able to, you know, equate to that and find, you know, do you have a personal experience that you can then relate to others? And through that, are you then able to bring music in? So yeah, I don't know if that's helpful.
Great. So there are a couple of questions about the sort of the nitty gritty of types of content and resources. So there's a question for both of you. If you could name 2 or 3 apps or things that you use to generate content that are helpful or that you have seen create good things. Jorell, you mentioned Canva. So sort of going beyond the Instagram filter, but what is that next level of resource that both of you have had success with?
For me, I mean, I use Canva just for, I help out friends with their, you know, their press kit materials to kind of make it pop. Because we're, you know, if you have certain fonts and you're reading the same font over and over again, it's kind of like, your eyes get tired. But then if something really hits you, it's like, oh, I really want to read this just because the font's so beautiful. And you're actually getting the context of what the person is like by just reading what they're about and reading their story. So for me, I mean, it sounds boring, but like I actually really enjoy doing that because it's a fun project. And since we're quarantined, might as well. The other thing, I guess, and it ties in with material and what you're posting. I started to relearn. I learned it in high school and college, but Photoshop, because why not? And a lot of our stuff now is picture form or video form, so we should be able to have a basic model of what we want to present as far as what we are versus something that's a copyright or a carbon copy of something that we've all seen 20 times before. I'm not saying go to your roof and throw water over it and then pose and, you know, take a picture. I mean, it'd be pretty cool, but like make sure there's nobody below when you do it. But something like that, find ways to kind of create a photo montage for yourself and for your brand and for just for fun, even if it's for family. And someone might see that and think, oh my God, she looks like a great Tosca. Boom, there you go. So I guess that's my two examples.
Cool.
Maya,
what about you?
I have a lot of friends that use Canva, which I think is great. It's not that expensive, and they're doing right now a free trial that I think is longer than normal. I use Adobe Creative Cloud that you don't, as a singer or performer, I don't think need to have the full Creative Cloud membership. But honestly, as Jorell was saying, Photoshop is such a worthwhile investment. It's a visual medium that we work in, and I think having that ability to edit a photo, Photoshop actually, much like Illustrator, which is kind of the Canva of the Adobe series, you actually can add fonts, you can create just graphics without pictures. I think it's such a worthwhile thing to invest in, and I think it's like $20 a month just to have those two. It's Photoshop and it comes with Lightroom. That I think is the core. If you can edit a photo and you can put some font over it in a designed way, that's really great. I would say also, and I saw a comment somewhere in here, taking better photos. I mean, one of the things that's incredible right now is that we have access, the majority of us, to a smartphone, and the cameras are absolutely incredible. I mean, something that only photographers had access to years ago, we now have in the palm of our hand, and it can be with us anywhere. So I think, as Jorell said, you know, have fun with it, continue to experiment, find your best angle, try new experiments in terms of, you know, going outside, whatever it might be, and enjoy the time with your friends. But I think just developing that photography skill and having that be an aspect of just catching your own, you know, lifestyle in photo, I think is a huge value, especially to a performer, where what's very highly marketable now is your lifestyle. Anthony Roth Costanzo, for example, did a huge piece on that for Akhenaten, and you know, he is the perfect example of social media king, as is Joyce Donato in her abilities. So
excellent. So going down the questions that people are posting in here, what's the best kind of content to post if you're keeping a limited social media footprint? Is it photos? Is it videos? Is it links, text? What's the best? And then what's the best, if you had to choose one platform to do it on, what would be the recommendation for the one platform?
It honestly depends on what you end up doing. If you're doing video and photography, that's an Instagram thing. If you're using Facebook, honestly, all of the above. But with that, if you're going to post video and or photos, make sure it's representative of you. And if you're going to post singing videos or performing videos, fortunately and unfortunately, we're in a time where representation to everything. And so if you miss a note or you skip a beat on a cadenza, someone might see that and think, oh, well, that person doesn't know the music. Or it could help you. I have a colleague, some of you know her, Janine DeBeek. She was singing a Handel's Messiah with a famous bass, and he just happened to record a snippet of it, and he posted it on social media, and he has a huge social media following, Morris Robinson, and she got a contract from the BBC Orchestra in London, and she just made her debut in San Francisco, and it was, I think it's credit to the Handel's Messiah thing she posted 2 years ago, but it was one of those things where she was presented in an amazing way. She's an incredible singer, but that opportunity opened up other opportunities for her. Mm-hmm. So make sure if you put something up, make sure it's something that you want to be well represented of you.
Maya?
Yeah, and I think to that, in terms of the technicality side, I mean, I completely agree with Jorell in terms of photo video is definitely an Instagram platform. But one of the only downsides I find with Instagram is the fact that linking is just really not intuitive, and you can only have one link, which is your bio link in your profile. So if you're someone that your medium is, you're more blog central, Instagram can be tough because you're only able to put the most recent blog post and or your general website as a link. But I would say for the most part, Instagram in terms of the social channels is at this point the best, and has the largest audience.
What about LinkedIn?
I think LinkedIn is very helpful if you're in the administrative track. As a performer, I mean, I don't know. With film, IMDb, obviously. With performers, I think it's interesting that there isn't really an IMDb of performing arts in the same way. And LinkedIn, I think, is so business oriented that it's not that it's not helpful for you, but I wouldn't personally invest too much time as a performer, and I wouldn't say there's as much of a networking facility for you. I don't know if you agree, Jorell.
I mean, yeah, administrative. I mean, I really only used it I used to work in education as well. So I kind of used it to market if I was performing with the kids that I was working with. And then I would kind of integrate, I just happen to be a professional, and kind of that way. But I guess it really doesn't, teeter to performance track, maybe.
Okay. Shifting to non-social media, but marketing via email. But if you're going to do e-blast and email updates, what's the best way to do it? Email blasts and templates versus personalizing? How much should you include? Are there downsides to including too much media? What are your thoughts?
You want to go, Jorell?
Sure. I think what's worked well for me is I know the audience that I'm speaking to. So if you receive an email from me, it's because you've okayed that or you've subscribed personally. And what I try to do is keep it short and sweet, because we've all received those emails where it's just too long and you just want to get to the end of it. But then you've also received that email where it's too short and there's 75 pictures and you're like, what's the point? So you kind of have to balance between what your opening statement is, your closing statement, and most importantly, what's in between. It's kind of like when you were in elementary school and you learned how to do a 3.5 essay. Intro, 3 quick points, and then close out. That's pretty much it. I mean, it's very simple. If you have photos, if you have videos, reviews, add them. I mean, they're so important. They're not important to that it should dictate your artistry, because let's just be real, some reviewers are great and some might go in the other direction. But if something showcases you in a great light and there's a picture that's representative of that set review or whatever you're speaking about within that topic, put it in there. It's so important for people to see that and to read that. But short and sweet.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think keeping it as simple as possible, and always remembering too that if you have a website or you have an Instagram or Facebook, that you can send people off to those channels as well and provide links to videos on YouTube. But I think the more people get lost in the design of the email and the feeling of it has to look professional, it has to look this certain way, they ended up not sending it. I hear that all the time, oh, this was so great and simple. It took me 20 minutes to put this whole thing together. I never thought it'd be so easy, but it was because they spent 4 hours basically judging themselves about, oh my gosh, I'm comparing it to this, company's email that they're sending out as a monthly newsletter. So I think just knowing your audience and being real, and as Jorell said, just keep it as simple as possible.
Next question from Merrill. What should go in a press kit?
Press kit basically can be a 2-pager, a 1-pager, or a 4-pager. Generally, just 1 page is basically top left or right corner, your headshot, and it's divided into either 3 or 2 columns where you have your biography, you have some reviews or a review, something specific with a photo of a performance shot that's not a headshot. And then in the 3rd column, you can have, in classical sense, you can have 5 roles that you've performed with the companies. If you want to put the conductor and director there, you can as well. And then make sure that you put concert work as well, because a lot of these companies also have connections with the symphonies that are, have performers that work in the opera company. And so you might be performing in Salome, but they need you for something with the symphony. So you're getting two bangs for your buck. And then a 2-page press kit is basically headshot, resume, which is what they do in theater, equity theater. 4-pager is headshot, biography, resume with concert material, people you've worked with, conductors, directors. 4th page can be, it's up to you, roles that have been suggested for you to learn, and additional roles that you have learned that are not on your resume, and or suggested roles that you will sing within 3 to 5 years with your concert material.
Maya, thoughts?
Agreed.
Great.
Good.
You're all wrong, Jorell.
This is a hefty question, but let's see if you can do it in 30 seconds or less, each of you. So Kat, moving from sort of developing a marketing strategy for an arts organization or an institution, there are steps there's protocol, there's history. How does one develop a mid to long-term marketing strategy as an individual artist? How would you recommend somebody tackle something like that, Maya?
I would say, where do you want to be in 5 years? Be really clear on the industry, and don't be apologetic if it's multiple industries, as Jorell said. And then from there, piecemeal it. Make sure that you're just doing something. I think that's most important. If you decide that you want to get an Instagram account, start a blog, really get your videos out there, do it. Because what often happens to people is they will reach the year mark and nothing's out there. So I think really finding what it is you're trying to say, defining your story, and then not apologizing and truly just going for it.
Yeah. There's this thing called, I think I'm probably gonna say around the rhombus chart, but it's basically 3 quick, it's like a power board. You have things that you need to do, you have things that you are currently working on, and then there's a completion list. So that to say, be as organized as you can with your thought pattern and what message you want to get across. Be as organized with who you want to be perceived as, because realistically, you want your first impression to be good, but if it's not, you always have second chance to redo it. And 3, when you are branding or rebranding, make sure, like thoroughly check, because Google is there, that it is not being used by someone else, because if you put it up there and you legalize it, they will sue you. I have seen it happen 4 times in the past year. So you have to be very careful with what you present. And of course, it takes 2 seconds to type it in .com or .org, and it'll tell you if it's used or not. And 4th, this is a bonus. If you are someone who has a connection with the church or with a local community environment of some sort, use them as your advocates, because they will talk you up always. Use them.
One last thing too, I think finding someone that can keep you accountable. There is nothing like having an accountability buddy, whether it's a friend, whether it's a coach, hiring someone that you say, I need to be kept on these things to help me be organized, whatever it might be. There's so much value in that.
Because would you say there's a negative impact on dormant social media accounts? If someone's looking for you and they see you haven't posted in 8 months, is that a negative?
I think it's not worth having an Instagram account that you're never going to put a profile photo and you don't have at least a good bio. I don't think it's a problem not to post for a long period of time, but make sure that what's out there is true to you and basically tells them what they need to know, because any impression is an impression. And right. Any social account can essentially be a very quick pitch deck. So I don't think there's any problem with having a dormant account, as long as it's not a dormant account from, for example, from college partying. If that has your name on it, private, delete, that's not helpful for you.
Right. And also with that, it's kind of like starting a fire in the woods. Eventually you're going to have to add more wood. Right. So if you want the trend to keep going, you got to keep stoking the fire. If you want it to die out, just let it die out.
Yeah. Excellent. So there was one final question about Jorell, your Morris Robinson story and the prevailing etiquette about posting other things. And I would just like to speak to that for a second as a producer and someone who's been in this position a lot. Please get permission from everybody in the video to post, from the company that is hosting, from the person giving you your paycheck for that gig, everybody, because that is a representation of everybody. A singer got a gig from that, but if there was a violinist who was having an off day, that's a representation on the internet that cannot go away. So just remember how you would want to be treated in those situations, and it's better to over ask, than be harmful to somebody in the long run.
Yeah, and in that case, everyone was okay with said video. So
perfect.
And also check legally, because I've had issues with conductors in the past where they have a really difficult time finding content to post because with unions and et cetera, be really, really aware of what the contractual basis is behind the video.
Very good point. Very good point. We are out of time, and I want to thank Maya and Jorell for sharing their insights and their processes. And thanks to all of you for your incredible questions. Have a wonderful rest of your week. Stay safe, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.